Hi everyone, here I am in my kitchen. I've got a pot of boiling water and I've got some muslin and I've got spiced chai flavored black tea. I like to use black tea because it seems to be a darker shade and I like my stain to be quite heavy, but you can use any type of tea that you'd like to try. Mix it up a little bit and see what different shades you'll come out with. After my water comes to a boil, I'm going to put my tea in, and I'm using 4 pouches just because of the small amount of muslin that I'm going to stain. Okay, so I've dropped my tea bags in. I'm going to turn off my stove and I'm just going to dip my muslin in the tea, and I'm just going to let it sit. I've let my muslin and my twill sit for days, and the longer you let it sit, the darker your stain will be. And another thing that I like to do is, if you let some of the soaked muslin kind of come up above the surface of the water and air dry, it gives it a really dark stain around the edges, so it looks even more antiqued and aged. So it's just up to you, but I just come in and dip it throughout the day, and then I let it sit for however long, I guess a day to 2 days, depending on how dark you want your stain. And then I squeeze it out and I pop it in my dryer for about 20 minutes and it's ready to go. Pretty simple. Alright, so I've let my muslin soak for a day or two, and this is the beautiful shade that it has come out looking like. It's quite dark, but I like it that way. So now what I'm going to show you how to do is how to assemble some flowers using your muslin and your paper tray ink dies. Just a few basic supplies are needed for your flower, along with your tea stained muslin. I used ruby rose dies, but any paper tray ink flower die will do, and then some burlap that you can find in the boutique. I've gone ahead and die cut my flowers. I've done 4 of the larger ruby rose, and then I've done a couple of the smaller. And then I just decided to mix in some different layers. So I used lovely layers as well. Got them folded up. And I also thought it might be fun to mix in some cork. So I've die cut some cork as well. But before we assemble the flowers, we're going to stamp them. And I'm using my Background Basics Textile stamp set and Classic Craft ink. You can use any color you want. I've tried black, or excuse me, smoky shadow, and I've used melonberry, and I've tried pink, and for this project I decided we'd go with a really aged vintage look, and I decided just to go ahead with the Classic Craft. So we'll stamp each of these layers and then we'll assemble the flowers together. But I encourage you to try different colors. Melonberry might just be my favorite, but I wanted to use Classic Craft for this. Alright, so I've got each of my layers stamped. Those that I'm going to fold in half, the lovely layers on this flower, I've stamped both sides so that you can see the stamp whether you fold it or not. And I'm going to stitch my layers together, so I'm not even going to worry about adhering them together. I'll just use a tiny dab in the middle, but nothing too superpowered there. But the 4 layers of the larger ruby rose first. And I also was going to mention that I don't iron my muslin. Here's my sample. I don't iron it when it's done drying because I want my flowers to be full, and if you iron then they'll be flat, but that's completely up to you. Okay, and then next what we'll do It's one of the smaller Ruby Rose. Then I am folding the lovely layers in half twice, and it's going to go next. You can assemble these any way you choose. Okay, and then the next lovely layers layer is going to be folded in half twice. Go right there, the center. Okay, and then I'm going to top it with my second medium Ruby Rose flower. Okay, and then followed by my cork flower. And then here's where you get to add whatever you'd like to the center. I've used vintage trim and my paper tray ink flower die. I'll have all of the supplies listed at the end of the tutorial. I'm going to put that right there in the center. And then I'm going to stitch this button to the center so all my layers will be nice and snug. My layers are now stitched together, and you could end right there if you want, but I've gone ahead and cut some burlap leaves using the Ruby Rose die. And I love the natural look and the texture that burlap brings, so we're just going to tuck those die cut leaves in between some of these layers. Let them peek out a little bit, and then just fluff your flower. Fold those layers upwards, and you've got yourself a fun, cute, stamped muslin flower that you've tea stained, and it's straight from your heart.